Okay, in this video, we're going to do something different. A lot of you see how I mind map my books, but you don't really understand the method or the way I go about doing it, and that's what I want to discuss in this video. So a couple things. Number one is I released a full program on how to do it, everything step by step, all the elements, and the link to that program, if you can afford the modest investment, is in the description of the video. So let's get started. This is an overview. I couldn't possibly go as deep as I'd like to do. In the program, I got 7+ hours, and I'm adding more content every single week on there, so it can easily go up to 15, 20 hours. In this video, we're going to go as deep as I can within a reasonable amount of time to explain the process that I use to help me mind map in a way that maximizes learning and understanding and also allows me to teach from the perspective of somebody that has a lot of experience, because A, I have the experience, but B, I'm able to do something very interesting with the way I learn, the way I use mind mapping to learn, and that is that I'm able to evoke insights and perspectives, optimizations, key distinctions that are generated as a result of, number one, the content that you're consuming, the books that you're reading, and number two, the process of mind mapping, and that's what we're going to discuss in this video. And the title of my program is actually called How to Mind Map a Business or Personal Development Book for Maximum Learning. So the content that I'm covering in this video and in my program is geared towards business and personal development information. Learning, business, and personal development information. This is essentially about learning how to learn. We don't really invest a lot of time learning how to learn. We spend a lot of time learning. And in today's world, you've got to be able to learn faster. You've got to be able to learn more efficiently. And you've got to be able to take action on what you learn, because that's the only way you can stay competitive. And thus, it's very important nowadays, more than ever before, to look at your study process, to look at the way you learn, to essentially get better at learning how to learn. And that's what we're going to cover, and that's what I cover in my program. And specifically, there's a way to do it when it comes to business and personal development information. I know so because I've been working on this for 18+ years. Okay? Ever since I started in corporate back in 2000, I've been obsessed with learning how to learn because I realized that was a shortcut. While everyone was focusing on the things that they were learning, they all had the same dilemma. They would run out of time. Thus, there had to be a better way to learn, a more efficient way of learning. So number one, I focus on behavioral change. I don't want to necessarily learn to just have a lot of theory in my brain. I don't want to be able to just learn and talk about something. I actually want to produce results. And I'm going to make the assumption that you're on the same boat as me. When you study business and personal development information, you want behavioral change in your life and in your business. The problem is a lot of the books don't necessarily teach you the in-depth how to do that, because that's not their position. Their position is on the theory or the specific elements. It would be kind of ludicrous to expect them to do that for you. While some books can do it better than others, to really get good at learning how to learn these kinds of information, business and personal development information, in a way that creates behavioral change is a responsibility that you have to take on. And what I found in my 18 years of study and actions and results in my business and personal development is that mind mapping is one of the best tools that allows you to get there. It allows you to incorporate the key principles, the key elements that are really powerful for creating behavioral change in a way that speaks to rewriting the code in your subconscious mind, in a way that gets you to take action in an automatic fashion that gets you to produce results with as little or if any resistance as possible. Because when you study business and personal development information, a lot of the information can seem overwhelming and daunting and almost impossible to implement. In other words, you can't really see yourself implementing that information because of the magnitude and the challenge that the perception might be. But the truth is, if you use a certain process and a formula, you can implement that information with ease, and you can implement this information consistently, compounded over time, and then move on to the next bit of information. So you'll never end up like many others who study this kind of information and A, don't take any action at all, and B, when they take action, they kind of take very mediocre action and they don't really get the results, and C, if they consistently take action, they might produce some results, but they are heavily under optimized on the results that they can take had they had focused on the ability to learn how to learn. So why mind mapping then? Well, first of all, mind mapping restructures the way you think. Okay, I come from a background where I was very slow, very slow in my ability to process information, very slow in my wits, very slow in my ability to understand. I failed grade 10 math like 3 times. And the reason why is not because I'm dumb or stupid or I wasn't gifted. It's because I didn't understand the very systematic process for consuming large volumes of complex information and organizing that information to help me understand better and create that behavioral change. It took me a long time to figure that out, and my journey in that area really started in 2000 when I was, well done high school. So thus, if I had access to this information prior, it would have been a whole different story. You see, they don't really teach learning how to learn, and hopefully that changes, and I'd like to see that change in the education system. They teach you what to learn, but they don't really focus on how to learn and how to optimize your learning. Now, granted, some schools will do that and some teachers will focus on that, but I believe that we should invest far more time in learning how to learn nowadays than ever before because of the large volumes of information and complexity. Robert Greene said it best. Those that will, and I'm paraphrasing here, those that will inherit the future, or the ones that will be successful, are the ones that are able to manage the large volumes of complexity rather than being overwhelmed by it. Most people are overwhelmed by the complexity. And the reason why they're overwhelmed by the complexity is they don't have a systematic process for organizing large volumes of information in which focuses on the signal versus the noise, number one. Number two, restructures their inefficient way of thinking that has been programmed by the external environment, by different mediocre, suboptimal type of research and study methodologies. Okay, so I've gone and put a lot of work on this, and I found that myself, I'm the guinea pig. I ended up changing the way I think. Now I can deal with large volumes of complex information, and I could free flow in a soliloquy type fashion like this and still be on point and cover all the subpoints and revert back to the higher level of abstraction and so forth, because I developed the neural pathways, the organizational skills of large volumes of content, and I'm able to present it to you in my videos. And this is something that I have learned. And if I can do it coming from the background that I came from, then I truly believe that most people who are struggling with organizing large complex information, understanding information better, retaining information better, presenting information, large complex information better, can really go through the same process and be able to get the same results, if not better. So first of all, linear style notes does not connect as much to the way the brain organizes information. So most of us take notes in a linear bullet point or line notes fashion or highlighting fashion, but that's not the way the brain organizes information. The brain actually organizes information like a mind map. Okay, bits of information are connected to other bits of information, and we form connections in our brain to make sense, to give meaning to the different bits of information that we're consuming. So thus, it would make sense to then organize, take notes, and consume information from that perspective to not only aid the very natural process of how the brain processes information, but facilitate creating even more focus and awareness on the relevancy of the information in a way that actually creates those neural pathways from that perspective. Because if you do things the right way and you keep doing it the right way, the way that's in alignment with how your brain processes information, then you are going to further doing things the right way, number one. And number two is you're going to accelerate the development, and then things are going to really start to get cool as you're able to consume large volumes of information, make sense of it, take action on it, create that behavioral change in a exponential way. Okay? If you insert information into your brain in a mind map fashion, it is going to help you learn better. Okay? It's going to help you learn faster, and not just learn faster theoretically, being able to regurgitate it, but more importantly, learn in a way that reprograms your subconscious mind and does all these different things that I cover in my program to create the behavioral change that you want, because that's what we're focusing on here. Business and personal development information is about creating behavioral change, changing the actions you take that produce the results based on the theory that you're consuming from the books. All right, so here are the 3 areas that mind mapping helps us with, and we're going to get into discussion into these 3 areas. Number 1 is focus. Okay, let's talk about the currency of attention. Your attention is very valuable. Okay, your attention, arguably nowadays in this world, and probably always has been, is the most valuable currency. It's worth more than money. Because if somebody has your attention and they hold your attention, they can steer you in the direction that they want to take you in, which can lead to money or it could lead to other things. And that's why it's so valuable. That's why advertisers are fighting for your attention. That being said, you could even say there's a hypothetical war going on for your attention. And thus, you need to be able to recalibrate your attention to what is important to you. Now, this doesn't mean that advertising is evil or those that are trying to take your attention away are trying to bring you down. That's not what it means at all. It just means that you need to be able to differentiate what's important to you and what is not. You need to know where your attention is going. I need to determine if it's going in the right place that is related to the outcome that you want, or if it's taking you off course, not only taking you off course, causing you to drift, but essentially causing you to create neural pathways in your brain to make you a distracted, inefficient, lack of focused, oriented person. So thus, it's important to recalibrate our focus, and mind mapping helps us calibrate our focus because the very nature of mind mapping using the methodologies that I've discovered, and my ways of doing things are pretty different because I've invested arguably more time than anyone else on this planet to study mind mapping, 18 plus years of figuring this stuff out, and now I'm really deep on it. I've realized that it's a very important tool to help us stay focused on what is important as far as information goes that is relevant to the outcome that we want. And that is very important because A, it helps us get our outcome faster. B, it helps us recalibrate our focus so we find ourselves not being as easily distracted. I am far more focused as a result of using these methodologies now than ever before in my life. A lot of people comment about how focused I am. And a lot of times when I tell them that the background that I come from, where I was so distracted and I couldn't stay focused on anything longer than a few minutes, they're very shocked. They just think I'm gifted. The truth is I am not gifted. The truth is there's a system and a process for recalibrating focus, and most people have the capacity and ability to do it. Everyone is trying to get and hold your attention, so thus you need to be able to real-time differentiate where your attention goes. So now mind mapping is not only a tool you use to help you study business and personal development information, it's also an exercise of focus. The more you do it, the more you use it, provided you do it in the right way, okay? If you give somebody a mind mapping program and they don't know how to incorporate very specific important elements, which I cover in my program, what's going to happen is they're just, everywhere you go, there you are. They're just going to have very convoluted and unfocused and unspecific and unrelated and unvaluable and under-optimized, you could say, mind maps that aren't going to create the results they want because they don't realize all the elements that are required because A, it takes a while to really figure out what those elements are, and I've done that. And B, because it's such a free-flowing type of note-taking platform, there isn't really any structure except the branch structure. And if you don't understand the value of structure or how to structure in a way that creates behavioral change, maximizes learning, then it's not going to help you. So mind mapping, when done in the right way, will help you organize large volumes of information, number one, but it also will restructure the way you think. It'll help you recalibrate your attention to what you want. The interesting thing is focus is a default state of the human brain. Okay, focus is a default state. While we do have awareness that keeps us aware of potential dangers in our environment and so forth, and added information that we might not pay attention to that's valuable to us because of hyper focus, let's say, we still have that. I believe that most of us have too much awareness on external things or distractions and things like that. And right now, in this time in our world, we need to work on focus. We need to work on determining how to restructure our thinking that has been uncalibrated through advertising or whatever else. Again, not because of evil reasons, but because that's just how the game works. Everyone is trying to get your attention, and your goal is to try to keep your attention on what is important and valuable to you and your outcome, and you know what that is. So that's what it helps us do. If we allow our attention to drift, our self-esteem and self-confidence is going to go down. Students that have a high level of self-esteem and self-confidence tend to study and do better on tests, exams, and career. It's a known fact. So how can we raise our self-esteem and self-confidence? Well, something interesting I found too, because I come from a background of very low self-esteem and very low self-confidence. I found that when I allow my attention to go in all kinds of different directions, my self-esteem starts to drop also, because I don't feel confident that I can hold my attention. I don't feel confident that I'm really chasing my purpose. And every time my attention goes away and I'm doing something that distracts me, in a way you're kind of being psychologically defeated by an opponent, and thus your self-confidence will go down. So it is very important to do as many things as we can every day to keep our attention on what is important. Okay? Now, another thing is mind mapping helps facilitate clear thinking. Clear thinking. And clear thinking creates more opportunities. Okay? Clear thinking creates more opportunities. It's not about thinking more. It's not about thinking rapidly. It's about clear thinking. Because when you get clear on what it is that you're learning and the elements that make up the whole and what to focus on as far as highest and best use in 80-20 principle, then watch as you discover opportunities and insights and perspectives that other people won't be able to figure out because they're too overwhelmed by the sea of complexity. Mind mapping helps you facilitate clear thinking by the very structure of how we do mind mapping. Again, it has to be done in the right way. A distracted way of being distorts our ability to see opportunities. That's the opposite of that. If you're distracted, then you're probably not finding the insightful information required to level you up. The power is in the nuance. Power is in the nuance. There's a lot of different business and personal development information. Much of the information has been repeated over and over again and spoken from different variations and so forth in different books and training programs and audio programs and so forth. The power is to be able to see key nuances and distinctions that other people don't see. As a result, that's built on the foundation of that information. But you're not going to be able to do that unless you've got a systematic way of organizing notes that facilitates those insights and perspectives. And that's how mind mapping is super powerful when it comes to note-taking versus linear notes, any type of note-taking, because the very structure of breaking down, going from abstract to granular to further granularity to further granularity, where you get super granular, that's where you find the nuances. The nuances right there are the breakthroughs. Okay, that's where you'll come up with whole different niches. If you're in the business world, that's where you'll find deep elements in your subconscious mind that you weren't aware of that you need to work on. And if you're studying personal development information, and it evokes the insights and perspectives from within. The yogis and all spiritual traditions talk about how there is an inner voice. Okay, Steve Jobs talks about it, one of the greatest entrepreneurs that ever lived. Listen to your own inner voice. He said that many times in many speeches. That being said, how do you facilitate that clear connection to that inner voice? Well, the inner voice speaks from insights and perspectives. That's language of the inner voice. And mind mapping helps you with that by the very nature of cutting out the noise, the stuff that doesn't matter, focusing on the signals, and essentially getting you to be definite on your purpose, on the specificity of what you're learning. That's a powerful takeaway, probably arguably the biggest takeaway from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And remember, the title of the book is Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich. And thinking critically and thinking specifically and thinking clearly in a way that removes distraction, well, that's the kind of thinking that Napoleon Hill was talking about. Again, outcome-based learning, specific element related to mind mapping. Outcome-based learning. When you focus on learning, you need to start with the outcome first. You need to know what you want to get out of the book. You need to know what you want to learn. And a lot of times the titles of the book are the outcomes, but what you might not realize is that although the title of the book is compelling, contained within the book is the specific area of outcome that you want, the sub-element to the topic that you might want to focus on first. That's why my mind maps are different, is because when I make my study notes, when I present them, I'm looking at the outcome desired by the audience, and then I relate it back to my understanding, and then what kind of books are related to that, and then I generate insights and perspectives to speak to that outcome. This is very related, and I borrowed this principle from direct response marketing. Okay, direct response marketing is trackable, measurable, and contains compelling information. So I, switched it around and said compelling notes that speak to the outcome, and targets a specific body of knowledge based on outcome. Okay, I'm not going to get too deep into this because that's covered in my program. I couldn't possibly cover all this in 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. But when you get clear on your outcome and you take notes from a perspective of relating it to the outcome and understanding what are the elements of the books to take notes on that furthers the outcome faster, essentially the 80-20 principle, which we're going to talk about next, then you've got some power. And if it's business and personal development information, you have to be able to take notes that are some elements trackable, measurable, and are compelling to you, that speak to you or speak to the audience if you're presenting that information. And it has to target a very specific outcome, either for yourself and our audience, or it could have a high-level outcome with sub-elements of the discussion or the mind map having specific outcomes related to the main outcome. But the knowledge and the information that you extract from the book, plus the insights and perspectives that you gather as a result of studying the book, need to be presented in your mind map in a way that speaks to the outcome, and it's got to speak to the different kinds of learners, which is also covered in my program. It's got to speak to the different kinds of motivations, that's also covered in my program. It's got to fit into certain kinds of models that I borrowed from NLP, that's also in my program, to convey that message in a very clear way that creates a behavioral change. That's why those that are masters of direct response marketing are the best communicators in the world, the best learners, and arguably the best teachers in the world, even though they don't formally teach. Because they teach people to pay attention to something, when we talk about attention, and go down a process to buy, to make a buying decision, which is very powerful. Next is data and analytics. Okay, break down all the areas you want to improve. Okay, if you want to improve public speaking, what are the different elements of public speaking, such as voice tonality, language, certain kinds of communication methodologies, neuro-linguistic programming, different kinds of ways of telling stories, structuring information, understanding how to engage with certain audience. The list goes on and on and on. What are those areas? Breaking them down, mind mapping done in the right way allows you to do that. And then figure out what the data and metrics are for each subcomponents that make up the whole you want to improve. Because sometimes if you focus on specific sub-areas, the other areas tend to improve. By the way, focus, information hierarchy, and pattern recognition are the three areas of mind mapping that I believe are facilitated through my process. If you work on one area, they tend to improve the other areas. If you work on the focus area, it works on the information hierarchy area, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Build upon that, it'll improve pattern recognition. If you work on pattern recognition, it'll improve focus, and so forth. It keeps going. List goes on and on and on. Next, let's talk about the 80-20 principle. 80-20 principle. The truth is that not all information is valuable. Okay, what's valuable is the information that you need that produces the outcome in the fastest, most efficient and powerful way possible. And usually you'll find that to be in 20% of the information covered in the books that you're reading. Okay, 20% of the information. That's not to discount the rest of the information. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm saying is that 20% of the information, if you take the entire book and you took 20% and you organized it in order of value, 20% of that, when focused on, you'll find will produce 80% of the results. This is the Pareto principle. Okay, in the Pareto principle, 20% of what you do will produce 80% of the output. In business, 20% of your clients a lot of times produces 80% of your revenue. In fitness, 20% of the exercises that you do, 20% of the foods that you eat, 20% of different varying elements of whatever you do will produce 80% of the results that you get. So if you want to optimize your workouts, for example, you're always looking for the 20% of exercises that will produce 80% results. They found this to be true, for example, in high-intensity interval training. If you're not familiar with high-intensity interval training, it's essentially sprinting. One variation of this is sprinting for a minute, jogging for a minute, sprinting for a minute, jogging for a minute. And they found this to be, if you do this for about 15, 20 minutes, to have a greater benefit cardiovascular-wise in a lot of cases than long-distance running for 60 minutes, 80 minutes, 90 minutes. Now, there's obviously pros and cons and so forth, and this is not meant to be a discussion about that. But the key here is that you could do something in 20 minutes instead of 90 minutes that will produce greater results than if you invested 90 minutes. So that being said, where can you invest the rest of the time, right? That other 70 minutes. Where would you do? Or 100 minutes, let's say. 20 minutes cardio in high-intensity interval training versus 100 minutes of cardio. Okay, 80 more minutes that you could utilize for something else. That's the kind of way of thinking. Now, when we create our mind maps, we have to incorporate the 80-20 principle. Otherwise, our mind maps are going to get very massive. So I cover that in the program. But we really want to focus, again, on the 20% that is going to produce the 80% results when we're taking our notes. This is something that you get better at with practice. You don't expect you do this once or twice and you're going to be masterful at it. You get better with each mind map. You optimize. You apply what I like to focus on, the Kaizen, the Japanese Kaizen method of improvement, in which you're aiming to, with each mind map that you do, make incremental improvements from these perspectives. You're not making incremental improvements if you're not focusing on these perspectives each and every time you're doing the mind maps. Now, or you could take it a step further. If you want to go level up, find the 5%. Find and note the 5% that produces the 95% of the results. And then you're really making some fast progress. Next thing is mind mapping helps improve critical thinking skills. Critical thinking skills. Now, I'm probably going to do a book discussion on this channel on critical thinking because I think it's so important. Okay, so important. One of the most valuable skills that you can have today. I believe that learning how to learn is the number one skill. That's what I believe. And if I was to say what's number two, never really put much thought into it, I would say critical thinking is up there. Okay, critical thinking is up there. It is a very important skill, one that you need to dedicate as much as time as possible. And by the way, working on critical thinking skills really exercises the brain. Mind mapping, the way I do it, the way I train in my program, exercises the brain. This is not an easy program. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Critical thinking is a skill that's challenging, and it'll hit up all kinds of resistance in you. But if you can develop it, and you can keep developing it, because if you understand things like game theory and long-range thinking and whatever else related to critical thinking, then you've got an enormous amount of power, not only over yourself and your ability to control your subconscious mind and things like that, but your ability to essentially lead others. Okay, you'll gain a lot of respect as a result of that, and you will produce a lot of results. You will produce a lot of results for yourself, for others that you care about. So this will also help you sift through the signal versus noise. Now, the interesting thing about our world is that most people think that what they're saying is correct and what they're saying is right. So if you don't have critical thinking skills, you'll very easily have your attention pulled in a different direction. And then you'll realize afterwards that you were seduced down a different pathway that you didn't want to go to. But if you develop critical thinking skills, then you can essentially be in control because you'll be aware when somebody's presenting you noise or signal, and you'll move down the signal. Essentially, if things are moving you forward towards your objective, what do you want to achieve? Well, then you got some signal. If not, you've got some noise. And a lot of times people think, this is the trick. People might think that some of the signal is actually noise. They're confused. They don't have proper critical thinking skills, and they will confuse noise with signal. This has happened many times to me and happens to people every day. Okay, people will rather consume noise that's not good for them than signal that's beneficial for them. So when you apply mind mapping and you do it in a certain way, it helps you get the results of further emphasizing critical thinking in a way that creates behavioral change. So behavioral change is what we want. That's what I'm talking about when I say maximum learning. Okay, maximum learning is action-oriented behavioral change. It's not 95% theory and then only 5% action. It's as much action as possible because actions create clarity, actions produce results, actions is where the power is. And the information is designed to get you to take optimal action. That's why we study business and personal development information. If you're not taking enough action or qualitative action, then you're not really getting anywhere, or you're moving backwards, or you're wasting your time. And if you have competition in certain areas of business, they're excelling if they have access to this information, or they're using the very methodologies to some degree. They're doing it because they're focusing on the signal versus the noise, because they have a higher level of critical thinking skills to be able to differentiate. Next is internalizing through interactive repetition. Interactive repetition. So one of the things that I've done is I've recognized that it's almost universally true that we learn through repetition. However, repetition can be very boring. So mind mapping, and done in a certain way, the right way, the way that I teach, the way that I do, facilitates repetition in a fun way. Essentially, being the teacher is a form of repetition. Organizing your notes, your mind maps, in a way that challenges you to present that information to someone to create behavioral change in them is a form of interactive repetition. That's what you want to do. So I cover all these things, but remember, linear style notes and the most ways we learn how to learn, which is very minimal, which is really obsolete in today's world, doesn't put a lot of emphasis on interactive, stimulating type of repetition. They just tell you to reread your notes again, review your notes. Like, what does that really mean? That's not powerful enough. That's not how our brain works. It helps, but again, it's probably 80% of work for 20% of results. We want to do 20% of the work for 80% of the results. And linear notes oftentimes kills the desire for review. Okay, if you got a whole pile of notes, you look at that and you're ready to study, it's just the desire, unless you have an enormous amount of self-discipline, or you for some reason like doing that because you restructured the story that's associated with it, which you can do if you want, but it seems like a lot of work. The desire is not going to be there. Someone like me who didn't have a lot of focus, who was really only interested in what they were interested in, like most people are, but I think I'm probably a little bit more extreme in that spectrum, or I could be wrong. I really needed to figure out how to learn in a way that was stimulating so I could produce results in this world, essentially be able to create value. Because, we talk about in business, our job is to create value for a marketplace, and then we get paid for that value, and that's our contribution, and we keep repeating that process over and over again, and we're bettering the world, we're bettering ourselves, and we're making money, and we're thriving and surviving as a result of it. You could dedicate your whole life to that and live a very fulfilling life. That being said, in order to be able to do that, you have to study all these different elements of business. And if you're not passionate about the areas that you're studying, then there's going to be a lot of internal resistance to learning that information. So thus, we need a system of process, methodology to be able to take notes and study and process information that facilitates and encourages and motivates us at a deep level to want to study the areas that might on the surface not seem desirable to study. Okay? And mind mapping helps us do that when done in the right way. Next, deep reflection for 1 or 2 weeks or more is something that I do. It's my very unique twist that I found. Actually, a lot of the elements I cover in the course are my own unique twist. I'd say about 95% is my own unique twist, because when I learned mind mapping, I came across a few books and it was beneficial. It was far better than linear note taking, but it really, many years building upon the skill and figuring out what works and what worked, I started to twist things around and I started borrowing principles and ideologies from different kinds of models of learning, of coaching, of essentially modeling that they do for world-class athletes, neurolinguistic programming, best practice study methodologies that I had interviewed some of the best learners, some of the fastest learners, brilliant people. And, I was able to incorporate that in my training, and thus I'm able to create the mind maps when I do on this channel from that perspective, and you see that. One of the things that I do is I deeply reflect upon the information that I study in the books for 1 or 2 weeks more, or more, while I'm reading the book. And the way I do that is, let's talk about why I do it. I do it to generate insights and perspectives. And the insights and perspectives give me the nuance points that I mentioned, the highly optimized, nuanced areas that, when taken action on, produce amazing results. They're the connecting to the inner voice within. And I do it by taking action, focusing on the area that I'm studying and even outside the area. So, for example, if I'm studying fitness, I'm looking at areas outside of fitness that have similar methodologies and ways of doing things that are like fitness as far as personal development information goes. If I'm studying business-related information, and let's say I'm studying marketing, I'm going to study marketing not just in my industry, but in different industries and so forth. I also will study things that are related very deeply to the niche that I'm studying, but then I'll also look at other niches, sub-niches, and so forth. Again, doing that invokes insights and perspectives. You will find meaning in areas that may not seem related. Okay, you'll find meaning in areas that may not seem related. Sometimes you will find meaning in areas where others will tell you it's impossible to find meaning. One of the things that I do is when I study something is I communicate and I talk to people that share polarizing opinions and viewpoints on what I'm studying, and polarizing and opposing viewpoints in general in life. And someone might think like that's me focusing on the noise versus the signal and contradictory to my earlier statement, but it's not, because I'm doing it from the perspective of seeing how what I'm learning is either true or not true when I'm conversing with that person as they're giving experiences. Now that might sound kind of complex, but we cover all that in the program. Now, next is generating insights and perspectives. Okay, the power of repetition allows you to find insights and perspectives, relating the findings back to information you are learning to find connects. Okay, when you find insights and perspectives, or you go out there and you do things where you're connecting with people and learning from outside your areas or areas that might not seem related, you will gather insights and perspectives that you can then build upon your mind map. And then when you add that to your mind map, you go back to the books, and then the books kind of look different. That's why I always say books like Think and Grow Rich, they should be read multiple times, over and over again at different stages of your life, because the very insights and perspectives that you gather from taking action the first time you read the book, you go and apply it, you go back to the book, you'll find other areas of the book that will have totally different meaning than they had before. So starting to make sense? So you can see there's a lot of power in this. And then the information that you didn't see there before now becomes the 20% that produces the 80% of the results. So you look at the book from the first run, and the 20% that produces 80% of the results is going to be sometimes different than the information. Then you go back and do it again. You go back to the book. New information will be the 20% that will produce the 80% of the results. So mind mapping, and done in the right way, the way that I teach it, is designed to get to get you to evoke the insights and perspectives, number one. Number two, note your insights and perspectives from an 80-20 principle. Number three, take very specific notes that are related to the various elements and models that I cover in the program. And number four, it helps you recalibrate your brain to look for opportunities. Recalibrate your brain to look for opportunities. The thing is that our brain has far more potential and power that we give it. It's just most of us, and you can ask yourself this question, most of us are stimulated by environments that create distraction, that distort our way of thinking. We're surrounded by people and circumstances that don't think this way, and thus the neural pathways that are being created because of mirror neurons in our brain, you should look this up, mirror neurons are actually what other people are doing, which is suboptimal and distorting us. Again, they're not evil, most of them don't even know that they're doing this. So we need to be able to study and organize information in a way that recalibrates our brain to look for opportunities. And if you're like me and you come from a background where you have a hard time staying focused, well, mind mapping helps you stay engaged and passionate about what you're doing. Next, let's talk about information hierarchy. All right, now when it comes to information hierarchy, mind maps allows us, in the best way that I've found, to organize information in a hierarchy structure, because all information exists in hierarchy. Okay, hierarchy, highest level of abstraction being how to mind map a business or personal development book for maximum learning. Then the sub areas, right here when I talk about the three areas, and then the sub components of the three areas, and the sub components, and the list goes on and on and on and on. There's no other tool out there that allows you to do it, provided you do it from an 80-20 principle, because otherwise it could be very overwhelming, to organize information from abstract to granular. The more you mind map, the better you get at this. Okay, the more you mind map, the more you mind map the right way, the principles that I cover, the better you will get at this. Now, arguably, I've invested a lot of time, and like I said, more time than anyone else studying and researching this. Is reflected in my content that you enjoy. There is other people out there, and there's other ways and other components that I might not necessarily incorporate in my mind map, either A, because I don't believe it's the 20% that's going to give you the 80% of results. Thus, I'm not overwhelming with the different components. I focus on the best. But once you get it down at a right level, and you can keep building off that foundation. You can keep adding sub-elements, and you're picking up information, large volumes of complex information from abstract level, high level, and then breaking it down into the granular components and seeing the patterns, which we'll talk about later, pattern recognition. When you don't understand a subject, it's oftentimes more about where specifically you do not understand it. So when someone says, like, I don't understand paid advertising, it's like, well, it's not that you don't understand paid advertising, because you can define to me what paid advertising is. It's where in paid advertising you don't understand. Do you not understand ad creatives and the different elements that makes it work? Do you not understand the various tracking tools and software that's available to help you with your ad campaigns? Do you not understand about earnings per click, cost per lead, lifetime customer value, and all those sub-elements? Do you not understand about landing pages and optimizing copy and things like that? Do you not understand what the conversion points are? List goes on and on and on. What specifically don't you understand? When you take notes from a mind mapping perspective, you're able to break a subject down into from high level of abstraction to subtopics, to subtopics, subtopics, and granulars. And you're able to take notes to help you understand those areas and even identify the areas that you don't understand, and then go and study the books, the knowledge, the seminars, whatever in that specific area. And this applies for any kind of study. Even if you're studying, biology, it's the same thing. High level of abstraction and granulars. If you can't understand how it fits in, well, mind mapping helps you see and understand and make it a unconscious competent thing. By the way, different kinds of competence, right? Unconscious incompetence, the list goes on. We want to become conscious competent and then become unconscious competent. So my program is designed to make you conscious competent from being unconsciously or consciously incompetent. It's designed to make you conscious competent. And then through repetition of following the process, you become unconscious competent. You're just natural. You appear natural at doing these things, and people are just going to think you're smart. And unconscious competence is developed also in the ability to know exactly what level of abstraction to take your notes and communicate in. Okay, some communicators that I meet are very good at communicating at certain levels of abstraction, while others can go high and get really abstract and even esoteric, and then come back to granular, and others focus on granular and they can't go abstract. Well, and the optimal, the best type of communicators are able to communicate at the level of abstraction, high level of abstraction or granular required for the audience, number one, if they're teaching. Number two is if they are learning, they're able to organize notes in a way that captures maximum learning, the 80-20, based on the level of abstraction that they're studying. Again, this sounds very intense and loaded. I also cover in my program how to teach this stuff, okay? Because learning and teaching are part of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. If you want to get good at learning, you got to get good at teaching. If you want to get good at teaching, you got to get good at learning. This is if you want to become masterful. This is if you want to become the best at what you do. And my assumption is that if you're studying business and personal development information, you're taking the time to go outside of school to study this stuff, then you want to be the best. If not, you want to be as the best you can be. You want to hit your potential, your psychological potential, and psychological potential, you keep increasing that. You want to hit your genetic potential. It doesn't matter. You want to hit your potential, and if you want to be able to do that, you have to get better at learning how to learn. You got to look at how you learn and optimize how you learn. And while you're doing it, you've got to be able to, figure out what the inefficiencies are, number one. Number two, understand that the inefficiencies are either at an abstract level or granular level. Thus, you need to develop the ability to understand information hierarchy and where information fits in. Number three, you got to focus on the 80-20 principle, the 20% that produces the 80% of the results you want. And number four, you got to understand specifically where you don't understand the subject that you're learning. Okay, very important. What perspective, component, or meta element you do not understand? Okay, we're getting more specific. What perspective of the information, what component or meta element you do not understand? I'm not going to talk about meta elements. That's covered in the program. So determining what 80-20 you need to study. Where do you need to dedicate your time to study? Theoretical level, understanding through applications, comparing against data and analytics, generating insights and perspectives. All of the above is self-generating and self-revealing if you follow this process. First, you study through a theoretical level, take notes from a theoretical level. Then you take action, you apply it. You compare your actions to more theory and the data and analytics. We talk about metrics, and business is important. And even personal development, you can set up metrics and data. And then from there, you generate insights and perspectives either from yourself or your accountability partner or your mentor or the information contained within the book. And then the cycle repeats itself, and that is self-generating and self-revealing. So that would explain why someone can read Think and Grow Rich, and they can create a lot of success in their lives. And you take another person who reads Think and Grow Rich, and they don't go anywhere. And the reason is because they're not following a process. A lot of times people who create that, easy success, or it appears easy, are actually very unconsciously competent in doing these very things we're talking about. They might not be able to explain it because of their unconscious competence. They'll need someone like an NLP modeler to be able to break down why they're doing, how they're doing, what they're doing, when they're doing, to be able to explain it to someone else, essentially pass that model on to someone else. And by the way, when I created this program, I essentially modeled myself, which was a net result of me modeling other learners. And so when I modeled the program after what I did, because I was challenged by you guys on how to essentially teach and learn how I do using mind maps and present it. I modeled myself to figure out what the elements are. And then now in the program, am teaching them to you in the step-by-step manner, which are, again, built on the principles, the elements, the components that we're covering in here. So there's a lot in here to get started with, so you can get started with this today. So next is pattern recognition. That's the third area. Steve Jobs said in his famous commencement speech at Stanford, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. You can only connect them looking backwards." So what does this actually mean? Well, it's very self-evident, but there's a lot more to it. It's the ability to recognize patterns. The ability to recognize patterns. A lot of people whose books you read just reverse engineer their success and then teach it. Nothing wrong with that. That's how it works. Steve Jobs, anyone for that matter, they could look back and they could relate how everything in their past, a lot of things in their past, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different learnings contributed to their success. And then we read their books, we listen to their wisdom, because what that does is it sets us on the right track. We start to look for patterns in their ways of doing things, and we figure out how to apply based on modeling them to some degree. We don't always do it in a formal modeling process. I recommend you study modeling, NLP modeling specifically. That's going to accelerate your results. Study NLP modeling. Now, we can look at someone like Steve Jobs or these different experts who have written books and produce results in business and personal development areas. And what we can do is understand that the reason why they got there is because they connected the dots. Provided they're good at modeling, they can really connect the dots looking backwards and put into the book how they got there as a base for you to get started and even produce a certain level of results in your life. But you got to be able to, while you're taking your notes, understand how they got there to that point in the book and be able to, for yourself, as you build upon that information, reconstruct a process for you to follow, number one, and then connect the dots backwards to see what were the areas you could have improved on, the sub-optimized areas, and how to relate back into the book. And not only that, you will understand how the dots connect going forth. You're essentially stimulating your brain to think that way, to work that way, which, by the way, is a default state. It's just that I mentioned this earlier, distorted and distracted and suboptimal based on the external influence of distraction, suboptimal, and so forth. So when you recalibrate our brain to work this way, we get better at pattern recognition, the ability to connect the dots backwards, but not only backwards, but be able to foresee things, have the foresight to look ahead and connect the dots ahead. And mind mapping helps facilitate this kind of thinking, because if you look at this, I'm going to expand this all here. This is all a lot of different dots that I'm connecting and pulling together in this presentation. And I mentioned this earlier, when you get good at learning, you'll find yourself to be a good teacher. When you study modeling, you become a good teacher. And when you become a better teacher, you become a better learner. And you're able to not only connect the dots better, but you're able to present the dots you are connecting better. That's why Steve Jobs was an amazing communicator, because he'd be able to explain the dots that he had connected really well in his presentations. That's pattern recognition. You can develop that through mind mapping. You will be able to see things that others can't see because they don't develop pattern recognition skills. A lot of people do not put any emphasis on developing A, critical thinking skills, which I mentioned earlier, so important to develop, and B, the ability to see patterns, which actually is part of critical thinking skills. Okay, developing the ability to see patterns is going to fast track your results in business and personal development information, because that's where you'll find the shortcuts. That's where you'll find the signal versus noise. That's where you'll essentially blow past everyone else, and everyone else is going to think you're a genius and smart and ask you to teach them and so forth, not from an arrogant perspective, but because you know something that now you could teach them that also can produce the results, and they know it. So that's developed through mind mapping, by the very act of mind mapping and organizing information and using mind maps, but doing it, again, from the right way, the different elements that I've covered in this video and in my program. This will also help you produce results faster. That's what we want. We want to produce results faster. We live in the age where there's so much information right now. I try to do my heartfelt best on this channel, as you know, to take these books and concentrate them into videos to fast track your results. I try to take the best of the best, and I try to communicate it to a specific audience to accelerate the behavioral change. I try my best, but even then, you still have so much more information out there. Arguably, look at my channel. There's 20, 30, 50, 100 plus, I don't even know how many hours of videos that I've made, content deeply reflected upon as a result of thousands of hours of reading and studying and reflecting. And I'm trying to be of service to you by concentrating the content and give you the most powerful content. But even then, there's still more optimization. So that being said, the information age we live in right now can be very overwhelming, very overwhelming. However, if you organize and you study in the right way, the notes that you take in a way that creates a behavioral change, now you're going to produce results faster. Well, information is based on someone else's experience that you study. You learn how to take someone else's documented experience and apply a certain process to gain new insights and perspectives, optimizations, ways of doing things, faster routes to the outcome, viable ideas, breakthroughs, and innovation. You could say that this right here is the formula and premise to my channel, but it's the formula and premise for a lot of different types of growth and innovation when it comes to business and personal development, not just from the teaching perspective, but learning perspective. Okay, you take someone else's information, you note that information in a way that helps you understand it really well, to gather, to facilitate, to evoke insights and perspectives, optimizations, and ways of doing things, and the faster routes to the outcome, the viable ideas, not just ideas, viable ideas. In business, ideas are 10 for a penny. I made a video a while back from takeaways from the I Love Marketing podcast with Jeff Moore and Joe Polish. One of my favorite takeaways is ideas are 10 for a penny. It's not about the ideas, it's about the viable ideas, the ones that, when acted upon, produce the results. And there are many ideas being generated by many people based on the volume of complex information. Everyone's got ideas nowadays. But what are the most valuable ideas, most viable ideas, the ones that will produce the results that you can generate? And how do you generate those ideas faster, more efficiently? Well, that's all covered in my mind mapping program. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because this is what worked for me. This is what I did to build my business, to build my channel. And by the way, my channel is a labor of love. My business is all the initiatives that I do personally outside in other business dealings and client dealings and joint ventures and et cetera, and my management consulting and stuff like that. But I try to share all my experience with you and my insights and perspectives on this channel. And one of my heartfelt desires is I recognize the power of this, and I want many people, I want arguably everybody on this planet to get better at learning how to learn. And I discovered that that's my purpose. I'm very good at it, as you can see. And now I got to share it. Now I got to do everything I can to do it. That's a viable idea. And it's also a breakthrough and innovation when it comes to learning. But all that was generated through the very process that I'm teaching you right now. Again, take the theoretical level information from others. You understand through application, you take action, and you compare it to data and metrics and analytics that you set up prior to taking action. Compare that information, and then you generate insights and perspectives. The insights and perspectives come through optimization, new ways of doing things, faster routes to the outcome, viable ideas, breakthroughs, and innovation. And then you organize information in a way that facilitates pattern recognition. That's what we do with mind maps. We organize, if we do it in a proper way, it'll help you organize information in a way that facilitates that pattern recognition. Okay, when I do mind maps and I gather my insights and perspectives and share them with you on my channel, they are a net result of doing mind maps the way that I train on my program, because doing so facilitates the pattern recognition to generate those insights and perspectives. You see how this works? That's how I do it. The answers are always in front of you. Okay, the answers are always in front of you. We develop, now a lot of times what happens is, like, you might notice this, because I'm trying to keep this video very concentrate and deep to give you the most value, because I value your time. I recognize that even though I make long videos, I value your time, and I want to make sure that your time is well invested in what you do, just like how I make sure that my time is well invested in what I do. Thus, I'm not going to put fluff. I'm going to give you concentrate, best of the best, rat-tat-tat, what's going to produce the results. That being said, understand something. When someone gives you very concentrated information, when you're studying very concentrated information, your mind has the ability to, your brain kind of zones out. Have you noticed that? You ever talk to someone that's really smart and they're giving you information, like deep information, just firing it at you, and your brain just kind of zones out? That's because your brain is taking in so much information. The synapses are firing, patterns are changing in your brain, neural pathways are being built, deep realizations, deep understandings are happening. It could be so overwhelming that you kind of shut up. So the answers are always in front of you. You need to be able to develop the ability through mind mapping. One of the best ways that I found to develop the ability to absorb large volumes of highly complex, nuance-based information that is presented in front of you. One of the things that I do, I'm here in Los Angeles, is I'm hanging around some very successful people that are my mentors. And when they talk, they fire away and my mind drifts and zones. That's my litmus test on how much I am underutilizing their time and energy. I then go back and keep doing this kind of stuff. So when I go back to them the next time, I'm able to absorb a large more volume of information. Plus I record the conversation and I play it to myself 2, 3, 4, 5 times to pick up on the nuance elements to create those further behavioral change elements in my brain. Does that make sense? That should be right there the premise and the focus and the core reason above all the other reasons, or alongside all the other reasons, as to learning how to learn, number one. Number two, doing it in a way that is in alignment with the best practices of modeling and specifically mind mapping. This is why we do it. And it helps us more pragmatically isolate the action steps, and the actions bring clarity which evoke the insights and perspectives. Now remember, there's what you know you don't know and what you don't know you don't know. Okay? I'll say that again. There's what you know you don't know. Like you can say, I'm not good at paid advertising, or I'm not good at public speaking, or I'm not good at understanding the principles of the Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, or I don't have high levels of productivity, whatever it is. Those are all what you know you don't know. And there's what you don't know that you don't know. You see, when you go down this journey of business, and I speak from experience, when I started this journey, I thought it was going to be a certain way. I thought I was going to be a certain way when I got a certain level of success. But the truth is that when I went down this journey, I changed. I started to figure out things that I didn't know that I needed to know. And the way I thought it was going to work was totally different than the way it was when it actually worked. We're talking about financial success. We're talking about the way you acquire the financial success, the way you are, the way you think. A lot of these things, you don't know what you don't know. Through the journey and the process, you develop certain kinds of skills, you acquire certain kinds of knowledge that were totally outside of your awareness. They were there, the answers were all in front of you, but you couldn't relate them, so it was outside of your awareness. Just because something's in front of you doesn't mean it's within your awareness. So how do we now maximize and level up by placing ourselves in front of information where there's a ton of opportunity and power, which is what you don't know that you don't know? Okay, how do you find that? Well, that's the kind of perspective that I cover in this program. Plus, that is how I teach these mind maps. So if you're interested in taking my program because you want to become a better teacher, then you're in for a treat because I cover those principles in there. Again, I have to do so because teaching and learning are two sides of the same coin. If I'm going to teach you how to learn, then I have to teach you how to teach. Most of the time, we aim to learn what we know we don't know. Okay, that's what we do. That's our bias. We should be automatically generating and evoking the desire through a process and a system which I created to automatically desire to know what you don't know that you don't know. That's where the insights and perspectives are. Some of the greatest opportunity was found in what you don't know you don't know. Okay, that's where some of the greatest opportunity is found, in what you don't know you don't know. That's the part of you that will change your subconscious mind. Okay, and you get that through taking action. Yes, organizing your notes in a certain way, take action, go back to your notes, build upon using the principle, 80-20 principle, the different kinds of learning models, and so forth. That facilitates optimal, viable action, which then feeds back into further understanding, deeper understanding, and realizations, which furthers even more insights and perspectives, and it keeps going. Self-revealing and self-generating. Organizing, study information in a hierarchy manner till you find the action you take pulls you into an unknown area, and when you are in this area, you discover elements that you, one, never thought you needed to learn. Never thought you needed to learn. That's very interesting. When you go down the journey of business and personal development, you have a bias for what you think you have to learn. Then when you go deeper down the journey, you find elements that you never thought you needed to learn. Then you become passionate about that. The key is to accelerate that, and we do that through mind mapping. We find the specific areas, because mind mapping is one of the only is arguably the only note-taking that I found. If I found something better, I'd be talking about it, implementing it, teaching it. The best note-taking to be able to granularly find those specific points where, like, you isolate it, like you were doing an operation, like a scientist would, the areas that you would need to learn. And avoid learning because of subconscious blockages. Okay? Business and personal development information is designed to create powerful business and personal development information. Is designed to create behavioral change. Behavioral change. Behavioral change is done by reprogramming the subconscious. Good business and personal development information, which, by the way, there isn't a lot of that out there, because not a lot of people who write business and personal development books, in all fairness, really go deep into learning how to learn and all those elements. There are authors that can do this. You'll know based on when you read the books how much actions you take, okay? And some of them are unconsciously competent in doing it, and some of them have developed and refined the skills. Good business and personal development information is designed to overcome subconscious blocks in your subconscious mind, and thus the actions just flow naturally. Now, the truth is that you talk to a lot of people about business, they already know the actions that they can take or they need to take. Now, they might not know like the super granular specifics of the actions and all the results that's going to happen from the actions, but they do know what the actions they should take. But they don't take those actions. It's because they haven't uncovered an area of what they don't know that could prevent that right now is preventing them, because they haven't uncovered that through their note-taking and studying. It's preventing them from actually automatically taking the action. They have a subconscious block. It'll help you determine if you really need to have a coach, mentor, or accountability partner to break through. Most coaches and mentors, right now there's a lot of different coaches and mentors that you can hire. Most of them are underutilized and underappreciated. I see this. I know a lot of coaches and mentors, business coaches and mentors, sports coaches and mentors, and accountability partners. They're underutilized because most people do not value those relationships as much as they do. They have somebody at their disposal who has been studying how to coach people and how to mentor people and so forth, but they're bringing all their baggage into that equation. Now, granted, a good mentor and coach can help you overcome that. And, those kind of coaches and mentors are obviously going to charge a premium for that because they're very good at it. And there's a lineup for people that can overcome subconscious barriers because there's a lot of power in it. Help you overcome the subconscious barriers. But if you don't have access to these high-level premium coaches that you have to invest a lot of money, and rightfully so, then you can find people that can help you overcome a very specific blockage that you have, and that's going to be a lot more of a niche thing. And a lot of times, because it doesn't involve a lot of time, energy, and resources from the coach or mentor or accountability partner, the costs will be lower. So thus, you could know specifically what you want to get out of consulting arrangements and so forth. Most consultants are underutilized and underappreciated also, because what happens is a company will be like, well, we need a consultant to help us with this, but they're not very specific on the areas specifically that they need the consultant for. So when they bring the consultant in, they're not really asking good questions. They don't have good critical thinking skills. They're not being very specific on the questions, and they're very general, and then as a result, they're just dishing out a lot of money in consulting and not really getting a lot of value. You'll see this a lot in corporate businesses because in corporations, I'm not going to get into a whole discussion in this, but there's a lot of money and there's a lot of accountability and so forth and understanding and, because of the complexity of it. But in smaller, lean operations where the entrepreneurs or the associates connected to the entrepreneur are very sharp and specific, they tend to get far more utilization out of the consultants, and they tend to ask very pointed and granular and specific questions and get more results. Now, this is just what I found. Now, you may be experiencing the what you don't know in this video, okay, while I'm guiding you through this mind map. That's an example of the power right there. I'm able to sit down and put together a presentation like this using mind maps based on my experience, and I do it from books on my channel, but I do it in a way that facilitates insights and perspectives in me to present based on the best practices, which are incorporated in this video right here and all my videos, and I do it in a way to evoke those insights and perspectives and the what you don't know that you don't know, which based on the feedback, I get a lot of that from my audience, and I expect that because I intentionally do that. I intentionally make these videos to evoke the insights and perspectives and the what you don't know that you don't know. If I'm able to do that, and if you've experienced that in the video, then you've experienced the power of what my program can do. And if you're interested in the program, the link is in the description of this video. Now, depending on when you're watching this video is going to be up for, I don't know how long, it'll probably just be up on my channel. The early bird, when I release this video, 4 days, will have a discounted rate because I want to get more students on board, and I always like to reward those that take action. But regardless, if that offer is up, this video is still up, then you can sign up at whatever the regular price will be at the time at the link at the bottom of the description. Thank you very much for watching this video. I look forward to you being a part of the program.